Hi, my name is Jen White, Chief Brand Architect at Collective Memory. In this episode of the Business Growth Architect Show, I share my insights on what it means to develop brand internally and externally for your organization and why that matters for you. If you are interested in growing mind share and building market share, please listen to the episode. I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
Welcome to the Business Growth Architect Show. I am Beate Gillette. I am the host. I want to welcome you to our globally top 10% ranked podcast, where you will hear from industry experts about the strategies that are working right now to unlock hidden opportunities in any market so that you can grow your authority and scale your impact. And now let's get started with the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is Beate Gillette, your host of the Business Growth Architect Show, and today I'm talking to my friend, Jen White from Collective Memory. And she is a branding expert, and we're going to dive in today about personal branding, what a lot of brands get wrong, what you can do to become an authority on branding, and I can't wait to get all these insights right here on the show for you. So welcome, Jen. I'm so excited to have you.
Oh, thanks, Beate. I'm so excited to be here. It's been a long time coming, and finally we're here, and I'm so excited about this conversation.
So you are a branding expert and you talk about branding authority. So please tell the audience a little bit about you, what you do.
Yeah, of course. My name is Jen, and I've been doing brand strategy for over 20 years. What's been interesting about my journey is that it came out of a visual practice. I am a creative at heart and have always thought about things in a creative way. And if we're thinking about branding, that's traditionally what people think of, right? They think of branding as the logo and the Tiffany color, the Nike swoosh, right? Those are the things that people say, oh gosh, this is my brand. This is what I need to have. I was there with everybody at year 10 with thinking that's exactly what brand is. And as I continued working in the space, what I've realized is that brand is so much more than that. It's the fundamentals of how you do business, what makes you different, and why that matters in the world. And the swoosh and the color and, all of the sort of fun visual material is really the icing on the cake. The real meat of brand is, in essence, why you exist. And what is your purpose here in the world?
So you have developed a system, like a brand authority type of system. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? What is that?
Of course. Yeah. So I like to call my system full spectrum branding or full spectrum brand strategy. And what that is it's really thinking about brand in a holistic sense. So oftentimes the traditional method of thinking about brand is really just thinking about how is this going to resonate with the consumer? Why does it matter for them? What's important? Most sort of traditional branding companies will put together audience profiles that are very specifically focused on the consumer. So why would the consumer buy this? Why does it matter? How does it change their life? And that's just one part of the equation in my mind. So full spectrum branding thinks about a triad of audience members. So not only are we thinking about the consumer, but we're also thinking about our internal employee and figuring out how to really develop an internal brand champion. What is important for that, or what is going to make that employee a brand champion? What is going to make that employee excited to come to work every day and excited to put in the long hours and the weekends that are going to be required to make the company hit the growth targets that they're looking? That purpose needs to hit that audience member as well. And the third stakeholder is our shareholders. So that could be, our financial partners, that could be the public if we're a publicly traded company, that could be potential partners and shareholders. So, what's important to them? Is it bottom line always? Yeah, it might be So that's part of the equation. But how else does this company make a difference in their world? If this company didn't exist, what else would fill that? So it's really important to understand the perspective of all of those audience members. And then I like to sit that grouping, or that, that Venn diagram of audience, into a society as a whole. If it sits in society, we're thinking not only about, why does this matter to consumers? How do we get employees to be engaged? But also, how are we taking care of our world? How are we growing? How are we taking care of people? How are we respecting the environment? How are we making people feel welcome and included as it relates to our business and our operations? So in essence, the work that I do goes way beyond that surface level branding of, the Nike swoosh and, the color palette, into how do we operate with integrity? How do we connect with all of these stakeholders in a meaningful way that will make them proud, will make them brand champions, and really sort of amplify the message that we have as a business to the external world, whether it be to their colleagues or their friends or to whomever is in their circle of trust. And by taking into consideration all of those different stakeholders and really finding a way to connect with them, they will authentically go out and be those brand champions. And what's more powerful than hearing from a friend or hearing from a trusted relationship that this company is doing something that they really believe in?
So, Jen, if I want to sum this up, you said that there's various ways of looking at a brand, and there has to be, in addition to a nice logo and a font size and a peach color or whatever color that is, something else that the brand actually stands for. And when the brand stands for something, the first buy-in we have to get from our employees. Do you have an example for us on what that looks like in the real world? Like, I mean, I'm immediately thinking about the Four Seasons, right? The Ritz-Carlton, where we know that every employee is empowered. I think the amount is like $1,000, up to $1,000, to make decisions that help that particular customer or the guest. So help me understand what that looks like in a corporation with a brand. Like if somebody sits at Nike in the Nike corporate offices, how does this person become a brand ambassador?
Yeah, absolutely. That where it starts is really, with the employee value proposition. So, when we're using the full spectrum brand strategy system, we have obviously a consumer value proposition for the consumer. We have an employee value proposition for the employee. And then for the shareholders, this oftentimes looks like an ESG strategy. The different value propositions need to ladder up to the shared purpose. And so that's what unifies them.
Mhm.
And the employee value proposition needs to be rooted in that. Let's say we're thinking about an organization that is building a consumer good product. So the consumer good product, there has to be an impact, right? There has to be a reason for this to belong. Maybe it's they're doing something interesting for the future. They're doing something interesting for humanity. And, the employees that are coming to the organization, they need to have values that align with the values that are present in the company. And so I think that what this value proposition does is it spells out what's really important to the company and allows the employee to decide if those values align with their own. So it helps them to say, do I believe in this company? Is this something that I can be proud of? Is this something that I'm just doing for the paycheck? Or is this something that I'm really invested in? Most companies would want the latter, right? That's where you get the employees who are going to put in the extra work, who are answer their phones or answer their emails on the weekends, because they truly believe and care about what the organization is doing and why that matters. But I think in society today, work is so much a part of our identity, and it aligns so much with who we want to be, that there really needs to be
Alignment, really.
Alignment.
Yeah. Like I'm thinking about this as you were talking about it. I was thinking about like if I'm Nike and I am producing shoes and sports gear, then would not be part of my value proposition as a brand. I mean, it's just do it. That is the brand promise. That means that I should make sure that my employees are on the weekends able to go to their respective games or supporting sports or playing sports or taking their families out in to these types of sports that I support. I mean, is that what we're talking about? That I cannot say, "Hey, you are in this great active company, and we'll just encourage athletes all over the world to just do it and be the best athletes and win," and then you can't leave until it's 9 o'clock at night because I hold you accountable to output versus the promise that we make as a brand to someone else. Is that something that you see?
100%. And it's really all about walking the talk.
Yeah.
And I think this is so relevant for the next generation of employees who are entering the workforce because we know that Gen Z cares a tremendous amount about transparency. They have the world at their fingertips. They are going to research in and out, the companies that they're choosing to align with. And I say that very carefully. They're choosing to align with them. I think that if you don't have integrity and you don't do and show up the way you say that you're going to, then there's no reason for anybody to believe. If you don't have a culture of brand champions within your organization that are out there telling people that they are so proud to work at this company and they feel that this is, the most exciting thing that they're going to stand behind, it's not going to resonate with the consumers. You can't just expect consumers to carry all the weight. Like the employees need to be a big part of that conversation.
Yeah, I think that what we've seen, you and I, in our history or in the time that we've worked in the industries around creativity and branding and marketing, is that in the past, there was the ability to keep things kind of hidden and to say, these are my values. And then the boss was really not that. People had to work overtime, they didn't get paid. And all of that stuff just stayed there and it never got out. And then if somebody would blow the whistle, which is where the whistleblower idea came from, is then they would be punished and blacklisted and thrown out. But today, that's really changed in the age of social media and our use of technology, where I think a lot of this isn't secret anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically the Wizard of Oz, right? Like it used to just be, here I am projecting on the screen, like, just believe me, don't look behind the curtain. And, we're starting to look behind the curtain. And we need to, as organizations, ensure that what comes out from behind the curtain is as magical as Oz, right?
I
Like it
love that.
needs to be warm, it needs to be believable, it needs to be accepting and also really truthful. I think that's the biggest thing, that when I go into organizations and I work with clients, my job isn't to say like, oh, well, you need to think about diversity, equity, inclusion 100% because that's the only thing that matters. I mean, I believe that matters, but what my job is to uncover what is really important for the organization and not have them be a round peg in a square hole, not have them trying to be something that they're not. Because if they're trying to be something that they're not, then it's never going to be
Yeah.
true.
And that'll stink. And I think people today have a much greater ability to, I call it the bullshitometer, where it's BS. And it's not true. Now, what does this mean for me as a business owner?
Yeah.
So, a business owner, I've of course watched Simon Sinek's Why, which you're touching on a little bit. Get clear what it is. But what do I do now?
This is not a flash in the pan, piece of work. This touches on foundational DNA alignment. And then there's a tremendous amount of change management that oftentimes has to happen within the organization to walk this talk that we've spelled out. There can be habits that need to be changed. There can be hiring practices that need to be changed. There can be communication practices that need to be completely revamped. And that's only, the internal side of things. If then we're thinking about how do we present this to the consumer? Do we need to shift our complete communication process, both visually and verbally? And then that is what triggers maybe a rebrand of what you were, or a retooling of the identity. This can be overwhelming, but it also doesn't have to be, because what I hear from my clients is that once they're clear with where they're going and who they are, decisions are so much easier. Mm-hmm. They're not trying to be someone else. If you're in high school, right, and you're trying to hang out with the cool group, and you're trying to say the right things, and you're trying to wear the right clothes, and you're trying to be everything that they want you to be, that's a lot of stress. Mm-hmm. Versus if you just settle into your friend group that is welcoming and, really brings out the best of you, that is where you feel the best, right? That's where you get the flow. That's where you feel comfortable. While this can trigger a lot of internal work, it also triggers a sense of just almost not security. I don't want to say that, but just comfort in a way.
Certainty. I think it's a sense of certainty.
Yes, you know who you are, what you have to do in order to show the world who you are.
Yeah, and I think we can take this maybe on a really basic level. Is when I think what I'm hearing from you in the branding exercise is very much like that. I always talk about the perception of myself and how other people see me. Mm-hmm. What supersedes?
Right.
It's always how other people see you.
That is the definition of branding, Beate.
Exactly, right?
Yes.
If someone looks at me and says, no, that's not at all, you're this, and you go, no, 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 I'm that, and you have to justify, you're completely off the mark. And then how many businesses do you think have a different perception on how they show up and what others see them as?
I think that it just depends on how in tuned they are with their audiences. Often in the exercises that I do a tremendous amount of research and surveying and focus grouping to understand what is it that the audiences actually think. The ultimate goal with branding is to grow mindshare. That's brand marketing, right? It's to grow mindshare. But first we have to understand where in the mind of the consumer we are today and how far we need to shift that. Or if it's non-existent, how do we plant that seed and start to grow? It really depends on the business, and some are more connected with their audiences than others. But I have to say, every time I go into one of these projects, I think that I always uncover things that the business didn't realize. And there's always that little aha moment. For example, I was working with a large CPG brand, and they were having culture issues internally, and there was a lot of friction, but they didn't have the root of the problem at their fingertips. When I did all of these interviews and focus groups, one of the things that I uncovered was that their entire employee base, their entire culture is built on high performance teams. And their entire employee base was made up of type A, high driving, really hard charging individuals that wanted to be their best and succeed. And one of the things that was happening within the culture is that the employees never felt like they finished something. They never felt like they got the check mark, the A+ on the project, put it away, done. It always just rolled into the next thing. And so, by uncovering that insight, the leadership team was able to say, okay, no problem. We just need to put a final box or a final bow around some of these projects and say, this is awesome. You achieved this, and here's the impact that you achieved. And then from there, keep moving on with the next project and keep going. But really just that little moment to say, hey, we hear you as people. We hear how you work. We hear how you can best thrive. And we are going to respond to that and create and develop a culture that nurtures that, is 100% what needs to happen.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I think it's a very powerful question to say, ask your consumers,
Yeah.
what do you think this is? And ask your employees, what do you think this is? And then we know, certainly from the work I do as a growth architect, is that sometimes the people at the top really don't understand what goes on the floor, not about the brilliance on the executive level floor.
Yeah. Why does this matter to the consumer essentially? And that's, a huge part of the equation.
So now, as a business owner, I'm listening to this podcast and I'm looking at myself and I'm saying, okay, I think I'm this, but I might not be that. So now I'm going to ask my clients, I'm going to ask my employees, or I'm going to ask people who know me, who see my brand, whatever size that is. And now I discover a discrepancy. And now what?
Well, I mean, I think that's where you have to get real with yourself. You have to get clear, like, is this really who I am? You need to develop communication pillars that will tell that story. And I think that tends to be a lot of where the work that I do actually lands, because the DNA is, it's often really right on the surface. Like, you just
Mhm.
need to kind of clear out the cobwebs, right? And then the real work is translating that idea into understandable communications that the consumer or the employee or the shareholder can actually internalize and remember. And so this is not only through what you say, it's also through what you do and how you show up. If you have a brand that is really sort of invested, then they need to create initiatives that will really sort of show that and communicate that in a way that those stakeholders understand and remember. So oftentimes it's not just about creating a photo that represents that, but it's creating a program, it's creating a community, it's creating a podcast or a workflow that really does ladder up to that communication principle, so you start to grow mind share of the audience.
I love that. I love that very much. Yes, I think the encouragement really on the podcast that I want the beehive to take away from, the one strategy implementable here today is a certain level of honesty. And this is an exercise. Does this ever go away, Jen, or do we do
Oh
this?
no. Yeah. This is something that I encourage my clients to think about on an ongoing basis, at a minimum of once a year. Check in. Is this who you are? Are you being true to who you are as an organization, and are you communicating that in an effective way? And, oftentimes, yes, that's great. Everything's good. Sometimes the landscape shifts and you have to shift with it. If we think about a brand, it's really like a person. Every year that goes by, every interaction that you have, you learn something and you grow. And it's the same with an organization. You can't just sit and be stagnant. You have to respond to what's happening in the world and how you're responding to that within the organization. So it's something that is really important to think about on at least an annual basis. I like to try to think about it quarterly, because oftentimes a lot of the work is fairly substantial to make this.
It certainly is. I mean, I think of an example that I literally just had last week. We've been really diving deep into Russell Brunson's funnel hacking and got the book, The Linchpin. And I mean, the man is a genius when it comes to online marketing and funnel building, but it didn't work. And then when I looked at it, I'm like, it's not that it doesn't work. Of course it works. There's plenty of examples out there that it works. It doesn't work for me because I hate it.
Yeah. Yeah, it has to be true. You can't just, and I think that's one of the things that, this whole process does, is it eliminates all of the chatter in the
Yes.
world, and it helps to uncover exactly what's important to
Yes,
the
what's
business.
really you and what's not is kind of what I'm getting here. You saying, I think we get sidetracked and trends and other things. And I'm sure brands do too with the social media and the influencers. I mean, one thinks about some of the ads that every year at Super Bowl are being run, and they are so uber trendy that you grab your head in disbelief and you go like, what was that all about? But it's because they got so into the zeitgeist of things that you say, does this message even matter with anybody? That's when branding was completely being, know what the
And I
word
think,
is.
yeah, and I think that that ends up, I mean, your point is that that ends up creating a huge amount of content that all looks the same.
Truly,
And
truly.
this process is really designed to help to guide the creation of communications so that it is in line with that identity, so that you don't just go to your designer and say, oh, hey, I like this logo, this kind of Airbnb, this upside down heart. I like that sort of like tech. I like this and that. Instead, you give the designer the fundamentals. You give the designer the structure of what you want to say, and they come up with a way to say it in the same light that you've really designed, right? So then you end up coming up with a really unique point of view, both visually and verbally, to communicate who you are. And then you end up having something that's lasting and makes an impression when people see it. And it's not just like, oh, there's the same commercial I just saw a million times, just said in a different way. And it makes it so there is intention behind all of the creative that's actually being done.
Yeah, I remember the social media manager, and she had done a theme in peach. And then that looked so good that literally every of her clients wanted that exact same color scheme for all of their social media.
Yeah.
And when I talked to her about it, she was so frustrated. She says, like, I'm glad they like it so much, but the point wasn't that I was going to give everybody the template.
Right.
The whole point of social media and my branding is that they'll pick something that will make that kind of an impact. But you're absolutely right. People kind of get sidetracked. We are at the end of the show. So, Jen, for somebody who now needs branding advice, where should we send them?
Well, you're always welcome to call me. I love just, talking about brand. I would love to work with organizations that are interested in really sort of making a statement for the world and making it a great workplace, a great product for consumers, and something that matters in the world. I like to post about branding and sort of my thought process and the way I approach branding on LinkedIn. So you can always follow me there. I definitely have some resources for you, and happy to share them so you can put them in the show notes, and we can share them with the audience.
Yeah, glad to do that. All right, Jen, you've been amazing. It's always great to talk to you. Appreciate you so much and your insights. And for everybody listening, branding is how other people see you, really, at the end of the day. And if that's not aligned with who you think you are or who you want to be, you need to be doing some of these branding exercises and branding revamps or branding, brainstorms that Jen's talking about. All right, Jen, it's been, as always, a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Beate.
And that is it for us for today. Thank you so much for listening to or watching this episode of the Business Growth Architect Show. If you like this episode, please share it with one other person who's got some branding issues that need to be addressed. And until next time, and goodbye. Thank you for listening to or watching the show. We are so excited that you're here, and we are very grateful for you. Now it's our turn to ask you for help. Please do share this episode with one other person that needs to hear what we were talking about today. If there's any question you have about business, please do reach out to us and let us know. And don't forget to schedule your complimentary uncovery session at uncoverysession.com, where one of our business growth advisors will help you to figure out what your number one business growth blocker is in only 15 minutes. And that's it for us today. Until next time.